It has been quite a while since I've done a YouTube video. I think it's close to a month at this point. And the reason for that is I've been remaking the Ashes of Creation Everything Known video that I did last year. So we're going to have a 2024 version of that here soon. And I feel like I'm only maybe 20% done with that at this point. It's going to take a long time. However, as I've gone through the wiki crazy in-depth again to make this video, I've kind of come up with some new ideas for videos because I've been lacking ideas for a long time. And I'll be honest, this topic got me a little excited, maybe a little hot and bothered, if you will, because personally I think it's kind of an interesting one. So the topic is node sieges and the fact that higher level nodes will be difficult and expensive to siege, and really just kind of looking at some alternative ways to potentially at least damage, a Metropolis node. Before I get into the video, though, I do want to mention that I've started streaming every Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Convert that to your time, obviously. On Twitch, and it's a podcast we're calling Ryvelations. This was a fan-voted name. We have episode 3 this Saturday. It's a pretty good time. You should check it out. And I'm still recruiting for my guild. Details of that are in the description. And look, there's a cool little intro thing I made for the guild that you can look at as well here. So now, let's get on into it. So this idea of higher level nodes being very expensive to siege and hard to successfully defeat in a siege got me thinking, how often will a Metropolis node truly be successfully sieged given the massive defender advantage that increases with node level and the fact that the attackers have to spend as much time and materials to siege the node as it took to build the node up in the first place. Certainly there could be special scenarios where for whatever reason a server decides as a collective they want to destroy a metro node and rebuild it in a different area for whatever reason. Maybe they want a different node type as the metro, for instance. Barring special cases where they're not adequately defended though, how often will a metro node actually be destroyed? At least the way they've described it, probably not very often. And to be fair, that is a good thing, as building a node up to metro stage could be something that takes months. And then say that node exists for years after that. In those cases, that is a massive amount of time and effort of players that is wiped out in a successful siege. Imagine as attackers spending 4 months building up the requisite materials to properly siege a metro node only to fail. That might be a hard sell to your boys in your guild or your node to put that kind of effort into something with a high chance to fail. However, I do think there could be a better way. There could be ways to weaken metro nodes before committing the time and resources to siege them. Or maybe just weakening the metro is enough and there is no need to even waste the time and resources to actually siege it. So what are some ways you could weaken a metro node before sieging it? Well, there are a lot of things involving node wars, guild wars, caravans, ecological warfare, and sieging vassal nodes of the metro node. First, you have node wars, which you could launch directly at the metro node or its vassals. If successful, these could weaken the metro node. Node wars and guild wars are not something that we've heard much about yet for Ashes, but we do know that this is a game that is meant to have a lot of risk and reward dynamics in every system. I suspect losing a node war will incur some sort of power loss for the node that loses. Whether that is lost tax revenue, or some buildings in the nodes get damaged and need to be repaired, or some of the node treasury funds are lost. Either way, I expect to see some kind of longer-term ramifications to losing a node war, other than just a mention in some sort of in-game leaderboard or log. It's also important to note that node wars can only be declared by nodes that are outside of the vassal chain of said metro node, which is one of the reasons that I think in general residents of nodes within a vassal chain are incentivized to be friendly with fellow citizens within the same vassal node. With that in mind, I think that in general we could see a situation where caravans running between various nodes and one vassal chain are not destroyed by members of a node within that vassal chain, since these caravans are improving the nodes as they run between these friendly nodes. This is a very rough drawing I made of how a vassal chain could look with buffer nodes between two different vassal chains. In theory, a lot of the guild wars, node wars, and hostile caravan activity could come from conflict between two different vassal chains. As a side note, if my theory does play out, I think that would be a great balance between seeing every single caravan get attacked on a server versus only select caravans getting attacked between two hostile vassal chains. Similar to node wars, guild wars could be used to weaken the major guilds of a metro node, especially the guilds that are the patron guilds of a node. And of course, destroying caravans that are going to the metro nodes and vassal nodes could be beneficial to, in essence, weaken the metro node as well. And then we have things like ecological warfare and sieging the smaller vassal nodes underneath the main metro node. Before we get into that though, I know you guys are always big fans of the sponsors of this channel, which is why we gotta talk about today's sponsor, keyboards. As computers have evolved, the trusty old keyboard has remained basically the same. We have all kinds of ways to enter information into a computer these days, but the old keyboard remains one of the most popular methods. The QWERTY keyboard layout has been around since 1878 and was invented by Christopher Sholes. The theory behind why he chose this for his typewriter layout was this layout caused less mechanism jams as common letters were separated from one another. Many people think QWERTY exists because it is the most efficient in terms of how much you have to move your fingers as a typist. However, that's not the case. In fact, the Dvorak layout invented in 1936 is much more efficient. But like the US still using the imperial measurement system, things sometimes just stick even if they are not the best. Steven is an avid user of keyboards when doing class showcases. However, he mostly just uses the S button to backpedal and clicks all his skills, so this is what his keyboard looks like. Thanks again to Keyboards for sponsoring today's video. Now back to regurgitating the Ashes wiki in a slightly different way than I have in past videos. Ecological warfare is another way that a metro node could be weakened. The land management system in Ashes can affect spawn rates of certain materials based on how aggressively they are harvested. So if there's a specific material that is needed for upgrading node defenses or crafting siege weaponry, going into the territory of that node and farming all of it and leaving could weaken the node's defenses. Then you have sieging smaller nodes underneath the metro node within the vassal system. The parent node in the vassal system receives taxes and any excess experience from those nodes. You might be saying that excess experience is kind of pointless at max level of a node, but that is not true. Every single day, a node essentially takes experience debt, or what Intrepid is calling node atrophy. So every day a node needs to accrue enough XP to offset this atrophy. And if you remove some or all the vassal nodes providing some extra daily experience to the metro node, it might be possible to cause that node to experience some ill effects of atrophy that can accrue over time. This can cause things like node services being disabled, and if enough node atrophy occurs, a node can even be destroyed. This could be a more cost-effective way of destroying a metro node than directly sieging it, using a combination of all the aforementioned things to weaken the node enough that it eventually dies to node atrophy. And of course, sieging the smaller nodes underneath the metro node is likely going to be a lot easier than sieging the metro node directly. However, there are a couple things to consider. Destroying a stage 3 node is probably fairly easy, and doing so would also destroy one stage 2 and one stage 1 node that are vassalized beneath the stage 3 node. Stage 3 nodes are the only node stage where a successful siege can also destroy nodes beneath it, so it does have that added benefit. However, rebuilding a new node to stage 3 only takes a few days, so this might not be that cost effective, and the tax revenue and extra experience to the metro node might not be that significant. However, what you could do if you have enough people is then immediately siege the stage 4 node that was above the stage 3 node, since that node might in effect be weaker. In order to do this, you would have to activate the siege scrolls at appropriate times to be able to siege these nodes in back-to-back days. Siege scrolls do have a cooldown before the siege actually starts, which are an amount of days equal to the node level. And you also have to consider that there is a 21-day cooldown after a node levels where it cannot be sieged. That stage 3 node that you destroy and is quickly rebuilt is going to be at least 21 days plus the 3 days siege declaration countdown period before you can siege it again. So this strategy could be kind of a one-shot thing where if you fail, you have to wait a long time to do it again. And by that time, the enemy nodes might be more prepared. Also, if you fail to win a node siege, there is a very long cooldown associated with that before it can be sieged again. So maybe players will find that sieging stage 3 nodes just isn't worth it since they can rebuild so fast. So maybe they just siege stage 4 and above nodes. Or maybe players find out that the only node worth sieging if you want to weaken the metro node is the stage 5 node directly beneath it. Or maybe since the higher level nodes are very hard to destroy in a siege, but you can still destroy certain high value node buildings during a siege. Even if the siege is unsuccessful, that might be a big enough thing to effectively weaken these nodes, as some node buildings could take a long time and a lot of materials to build. I think players are going to figure all these things out as they always do. But I do think some of these tactics could come into play when we start to talk about metro versus metro or vassal chain versus vassal chain rivalries. And of course, we could see some great stories come out of this once we actually get into this game and see these systems in action. That's all for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.